Hey, it's me, Maggie J. Today with a review of episode 6 of American Horror Stories, which I totally forgot to record, which is why episode 7 was posted before this episode here. But let's not worry about that. Let's talk about this microphone. I've been having terrible audio issues lately, and I own 4, if not 6 different microphones, and they're just not doing it. So, this is my last option before I'm just gonna have to go back to just capturing it with the camera because this is ridiculous. Just like the size of this mic, let's talk about this episode. This one is called Feral. I had a lot of ideas jump into my head when I heard the title of this, but I was not expecting this story. This one's more like an urban legend, like you've heard something like this before, but the details are just different. There are some pretty good elements to this story. I just don't think it needed to be 40 minutes long. Anyway, this episode opens like so many American Horror Stories do, with a cute little family riding in their car. But instead of heading to the murder house, parents Jay and Addie and their 3-year-old son, Jacob, are heading into Kern Canyon National Park for a weekend of camping, which immediately puts me on edge because I know of a book series called Missing 411 about all kinds of strange disappearances that happen in national parks. Some of these people are never recovered, and others are recovered in areas where a human probably shouldn't even be able to get to that location, and they are unharmed and clean clothes and all. It's strange. And a lot of those who go missing are children. So I've already got a lot of ideas, but I'm gonna let it play out before I say this is a story based on any of those other previous stories I've heard. At the campsite, Jay sets up their equipment and tents and private facilities and all. As it gets dark, the family has dinner, and later on, the parents are having some drinks. And later on, they get it on in the tent. It's proving to be a wonderful getaway for everyone. And jokingly, while they're trying to fall asleep, the mom says, "This is wonderful. We should come back again in 10 years. They both laugh and kiss and don't even notice the strange shadows outside their tent. The following morning, Addie is feeling that wine from the previous night and is in need of caffeine and a bathroom break before anyone can talk to her. Jay and Jacob are all ready to go fishing though, and they are not going to wait around for her, so they go ahead and take off while she's in the little toilet thing. Before the two guys set out, Jay tells Jacob there's something that he's going to have to be in charge of, and the father gives the boy his Boy Scout compass. Jacob clutches it in his tiny toddler hands and they set off to go fishing. Addie emerges from the bathroom a short while after they leave and notices a bloody trail leading away from the camp. She follows it and finds a deer that's been impaled on a broken tree branch, and the blood is still dripping from the body. It's gotta be Bigfoot, right? Then we flash to Jay and Jacob. They are on their way towards the water. Jacob is running ahead, hiding behind trees so he can jump out and say boo to scare his father. Around the 5th time they show this happening, Jacob doesn't jump out. Jay thinks that he's got a chance to sneak up on the boy, but when he goes and jumps around the tree, there's no one there. This boy is gone. Addie appears a moment later because she ran after them after she discovered this deer. So now they're both yelling and searching for Jacob, but this boy is never seen again. Remember the mom's 10 years from now comment? Well, ironically enough, we flash ahead that many years. Jay and Addie have divorced and are attempting to cope with their loss and the subsequent downward spiral of their lives, and neither of them is doing very well. A guy named Bob Birch shows up at Jay's door with a photo of a mid-sized person that Bob claims is Jacob and was taken very recently. He even has a Boy Scout compass that he says he found near the trail camera that took this photo of what resembled a small, slim-built human on a trail in the deep woods of the same national park that Jacob disappeared in. It sounds confusing, because it is. Jay asks how his son could be alive after all these years, and Bob blames the marijuana farms, saying that some of them are run by cartels who aren't above kidnapping people to work on their farms or to be trafficked. Which is not out of the question, I've heard about this, but you took a 3-year-old boy to be your marijuana grow slave? Or you took a 3-year-old boy to traffic, but yet 10 years later he's still wandering around the woods of the same state park that he disappeared in? And he still had the Boy Scout compass that he could conveniently drop on the ground after 10 years of being trafficked or slaved. I would be suspicious as fuck, but if Jay was me, there would be no more rest of this story, so he's gonna go ahead and follow this weak-ass lead. Bob offers to take Jay to where the photo was taken so they can investigate themselves, and perhaps Jay can find his boy. All Bob wants is $10,000 for supplies and guidance. Of course, Jay doesn't have this kind of money, so he's going to go ask Addie, who is not enthused about this idea. She insists it's a scam and is tired of going through this with every new person that approaches them with hopes of finding their son. He shows her the compass, which makes her lose it, because that is a step above what any of these other scammers have presented as evidence for knowing where their son is. Addie leaves the room crying, but in the following scene, she, Jay, and Bob are back in the national park, hiking towards a growers' camp that Bob says is expecting them to arrive before sunset. During the hike, Jay tries to connect with Addie about how her life has been since their divorce, which does not set the most productive of tones for the hike, and they wind up bickering for most of the journey. Bob tries to keep them motivated, but several times they hold up progress so they can just lay blame upon each other for the divorce. Meanwhile, someone in the woods is watching them. The trio come upon a ranger station that Bob says they have to check into. Otherwise, the ranger will get squirrely. Here's where we meet Ranger Stan, an Australian immigrant who was actually on duty the day that Jacob went missing and was attacked that night by something that threw rocks of a substantial size at the ranger and nearly knocked him out, while the creature carried a young boy off into the night. He can't legally say what it was that was carrying off the boy, but he definitely doesn't want them to traipse off into the deep woods in search of that same thing. Despite the ranger's warning and threat, the trio push on, continuing to argue along the way. But now it's Addie versus Bob about the weird shit that could have been happening on the night of their son's disappearance. Bob tells her if she believes a ranger crocodile hunter, she must be pretty crazy herself, which causes Jay to stand up for her and strongly tell Bob to not speak to Addie that way. And then he heads on down the path. Finally, Bob, Jay, and Addie reached meetup point, but all the people they were supposed to meet are lying in pieces all over this little campsite here. This discovery makes Bob lose his shit. He admits that not only was he scamming them with the photo and the compass, he was also working with these people, and they were going to kill them when they showed up so they could rob their money and stuff. I don't know. The amount of goods that you can get from two people who just hiked like 30 miles through the woods, it just doesn't seem worth it. I hope whatever's in this woods enjoyed killing y'all, because y'all fucking deserve this. Bob pulls out a handgun because he can't let them go now that they know his intentions. But before he can get a shot off, one of the dead people proves they're not exactly dead and rears up and bites this motherfucker like a snake. Now Bob is able to use his gun and just starts wildly firing, and one of the rounds hits Jay in the left side of his torso. Jay and Addie beat feet and make it back to the ranger station, and Aussie Ranger Stan dresses Jay's wound. Addie tries to explain what happened with Bob and the dead people in the woods. Stan starts looking out the window as if he's expecting something to happen, which is not making Jay feel comfortable. He wants to know what killed Bob, but Stan says he's not legally allowed to tell him. Jay is not going to keep playing by these cryptic rules, so he points his handgun at Stan and tells Addie to relieve him of the shotgun. Once weaponless, Stan is magically more than willing to divulge all the secrets that he knows. He retrieves a folder from a file cabinet that he says is the real reason why national parks exist: to keep humans from encountering things that would kill and eat them. But then they just let you wander around inside like it's no big deal. Jay and Addie open the folder and look through the photos inside. I call them Feral Nation, Stan says, of the creatures in the photos. They live in the deep woods. Many newspaper articles call them wild men, which is a point I want to come back to later. Not believing his story, the three of them further discuss what happened the day that Jacob went missing. Stan further explains the presence of some military units to do maybe search and rescue or something. Stan says he accompanied one of the groups of soldiers into the woods because he was familiar with that area, but he magically came out unscathed while the whole rest of the unit was slaughtered. Sounds very suspicious, Stan, but okay. I guess this proves that he's on the right side, so when he asks for his gun back, Jay gives it to him. He says he's going to contact the right authorities so they can bring the correct firepower for what's going on. While Jay and Addie sit in the lounge area, Jay spills his guts about how he's felt since Jacob's disappearance and how he messed everything up in his life because he wanted to be punished. Addie knows all this, and she snuggles up to him while he further tries to explain his feelings. In another room of the ranger cabin, Stan readies the radio, but before he can relay the warning, he's attacked by one of those feral things. 2 more burst through the windows of the lounge, and another comes barreling through the front door. And that one's got Bob's head on its shoulder area. I don't know. Ew. Fucking gross. Jay shoots one creature with his last bullet. Then Stan either luckily distracts the ferals or dutifully sacrifices himself to the 5 or 6 ferals while Jay and Addie are able to escape the ranger station. They're able to make it a short distance away from the cabin, but Jay is still wounded and Addie is not strong enough to carry him. So soon they just collapse to the ground and we can see that they are being surrounded by some creatures. Suddenly, a throne appears, mysteriously being carried closer and closer to the couple. Upon it sits a youth with some very long hair, a slack jaw, and a Boy Scout compass around his neck. It's Jacob, right? It's gotta be. The parents recognize the compass. They call him by his name, and it seems like there's a little spark of recognition. When young Jacob went missing, he was jumping out and scaring his dad by saying boo. And this boy looks at the parents for a few minutes and then says, boo. But then some other creature steps forward and speaks in their feral language. The captions tell us, he says, who are these people? And we pan back to the boy who replies in their language, dinner. And they all have a feast. And that's the end of the episode. This is actually a great story. This is the kind of story that people like Let's Read and Swamp Dweller and Mr. Creeps would have included in one of their many great short story compilations. It did not need to be 40 minutes long, but I'm not going to hold that extra padding against the main storyline. The only way you could have cut it down is to remove one or the other of the parents from the equation, but they both had to be there in the woods at the end for the conclusion. So I didn't enjoy watching them bicker all through the woods, but I don't know how else they could have just got there, so whatever. All right, well, now let's talk about Ranger Stan for a minute. At first, I thought that this was a terrible Australian accent being done by somebody that I have heard before. His voice sounds fine. But I read an article and learned this actor is actually full-on Australian, and that's his actual voice, but he's been doing an American accent and acting as an American for so long, he's not very confident in it, and that's why sometimes it's a little wavery. So I didn't believe the accent, but I did believe him to be a creepy park ranger who knew more than they wanted to share, and he did a good job of being bait while the parents escaped. So I think he went above and beyond his duties as a park ranger. Now, about that point that I said I would get back to, Ranger Stan says that these creatures are sometimes called wild men. And if you remember that terrible episode that we don't talk about, the Santa was also what they call a wild man. So I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to think that that wild man came from this pack of wild men, which would potentially make sense. But I don't know. I think this is maybe just careless writing and you forgot that you've already literally used the term wild man in reference to a different kind of a creature in this same exact series here. Writer of this show. Overall, I give this 3 out of 5 stars. If you did enjoy the premise of this story, I would suggest that you check out Missing 411. There's already several books that are published on this, but there is just hours and hours of these stories also being read online by creators and such. So however you like to consume your stories, these ones are pretty freaking good. And that is all that I have to say about this. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. You know the routine. And I hope to see you back here soon. Until then, y'all stay safe out there.